Welcome to episode 2 of Live in the Lounge. I'm so excited to be here, Maura.
I'm so excited to be here with you,
Oh my gosh.
and I'm proud of us for committing to month two.
Month 2, unfiltered, unedited, which, y'all, maybe one day we'll get there, but right now it's just about showing up and having the conversations.
Absolutely.
And
Um,
for those who are, oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just gonna say, part of the reason this is uncut and unfiltered is we
Mhm.
just want to make stuff, and making stuff means being messy and just doing the thing and not having it be perfect. So I thought I would
Yeah.
share that bit from our conversation yesterday.
I love that. No, it's so true. And so this you can listen to whether you're listening on Substack or Spotify, or if you're catching the sweet YouTube channel where you can see us actually talk. And if you were seeing that, then I'm sharing my screen to the beautiful episode artwork that is collage style little illustration of you holding something in your hand, which we will be talking about more during this episode. But I want to start off by really just connecting with you, Maura. And I have a fun intro question to ask you. So, if you teleported to a deserted island to explore for one day, so 24 hours solo exploration, and your food and water is taken care of, so it's not like survival survival mode, but you're solely there for a solo exploration, kind of like a retreat day. I want you to describe to me your ideal nature experience. So like what type of island are we on? Also, like, how might you begin to explore that? And then what you would have in your bag. Like, you could bring one bag with you. So, what would be in that bag? So, take us through that.
Okay, I'm gonna take a second to absorb the question. So we're doing an island and it's like a fantasy island and it's more about the vibe. You're trying to understand.
What kind of deserted island are we on? Are we in the Sahara
Okay.
Desert? Are we in a jungle? Are we tropical? Like, what type
Okay.
of island would you be interested in exploring for like a solo day adventure? So, describe to
Okay.
me like the nature in that.
I know exactly what kind of island I'd want to explore because I am someone who likes to go on Google Maps and just like zoom in on very remote places and like explore around. I especially like to do this in the Canada region and around like Iceland and Greenland. I would really want to be somewhere like very remote and very north. Like I like to explore things like the Falkland Islands, things that are just remote and cold, and it seems very otherworldly to me.
Mm.
Um, it's funny because I and my favorite season is not winter, but I like how extreme the light is on the poles, the fact that they're in these like polar nights and you can see the what is it called? The Northern Lights. Silly
Oh,
me.
yeah.
You can see the Northern Lights, and then in the summer you can see the sun until like 3 a.m. in places in like northern Alaska. Yeah. So
Beautiful.
that is
Okay, no,
that is
you
the
you
scenery.
took me there. I appreciated that. And also a little surprised too, because my first instinct was like, ooh, tropical. Like we're in a Hawaiian island or like in a so that was an unexpected answer, but I love that. And I want to hear what is in your bag that you have with you. And think of this kind of like maybe an artist retreat or a solo adventure. So what is in your bag that you have with you that might be little tools or things that you could do on the island, or it might just be something that yeah, whatever comes up for you in that question.
I like to when I'm exploring things because I go on a lot of artist walks. I like traveling light. So I think I would want a very lightweight camera. This is something I've been thinking about more.
Mhm.
I think I would go out and take more pictures that weren't just on my iPhone if it was lighter. So that's something I've been considering lately. So definitely a lightweight camera. Maybe it's my phone camera, maybe not. I would definitely have like a small journal. I'm really specific about the size of my journal, so I'm actually gonna show you, and I'm going to describe for the listeners who can't see me, but I really like these very thin
Hmm.
paperback notebooks
Moleskin?
because they just, you know what, sometimes they're moleskin. I don't think this one is. Oh, this is a moleskin. Sometimes they're
Okay.
not, though. Sometimes they're like
Yeah,
off-brand
but this
moleskin. But
size is pretty nice. It's almost like larger than a palm of your hand, a
yes.
bit taller.
Yes. Larger than the palm of a hand, very thin, very flexible. I like it because it feels like something I can throw around. It's not very precious. Whereas, like, okay, I got this leather little field notebook for Christmas and I haven't even touched it because it's like too precious to me that it's leather and hardcover and all of the things. So I would have an unprecious notebook, a lightweight camera, and some snacks and tea.
Oh, I love that. Yes. That's sweet. Do you think you would like partly like be on roads and just be guided, or are you the type of exploration person where you might look up things to do or have a little bit of a plan, or maybe a little bit of both? But what comes to you when I kind of bring up like the ways of exploring?
When I think about the ways that I've explored previously, I'm going to assume I would probably approach the island the same way, which is I look at a map
Mm-hmm.
first. And again, I'm dropping down in Google Maps. I do this in cities before I travel to cities as well. And as someone who used to live in a big city, I did this even when I was taking little exploration walks in Chicago. Um, but yeah, I would drop down and I would see like where's an interesting, like architecturally interesting neighborhood
Hmm.
to kind of go to. Is there any local eats I can go check out?
Yeah.
But if this island was like really remote, I think I'd want to go somewhere with some people
Mm.
because I would want to know what they like to do in their free time there.
Hmm. Oh, interesting. Yeah, either meeting some locals or if you could bring like a friend with you for exploration. That's sweet.
Hmm.
I love this idea though of packing light. And we talked about this in the last episode, but of just almost like a bag lady of sorts, just carrying around multiple things, and it's definitely part like neurodivergence and all the things, but also like I'm like, "Oh, what if I read?" And so packing light is super sweet, and the idea of a lightweight camera, some lenses of exploring, whether it's note taking, journaling, sketching, taking photos. I love that. That is super sweet. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. And now I'm like, I could talk about this, by the way, for probably a full hour, but we're not here. We're not here to discuss that. I was actually curious if you would possibly say that you would have or bring with you the Midwest tarot deck, which is what we'll talk about in a little bit. But I was like, ooh, I wonder if Maura would bring a tarot deck.
You know, I do occasionally when I'm traveling, but I like the ritual in my home
Yeah.
more than I do out and about. I have found that when I'm doing readings, it's too distracting to be out and about with the deck. So
Yep.
I've stopped carrying it around with me as frequently, I would say, as I did kind of a couple months ago.
I
But
love that. It's kind of like giving us little breadcrumbs into our little future chat in a bit, because I would love to talk to you more about personal rituals and like this, yeah, the sanctuary space of the home. But I want to go ahead and ask you to walk me through your timeline and your background in the arts as a creative, whether you want to take us back into like childhood of just like even stuff that you might have caught yourself doing as a kid. I know that, believe your both your or your dad is a photographer or a videographer. So like being in that creative just bubble. But just take us through a bit of timeline of how you've ended up to where you are right now.
I love that. Thank you for asking me that question. I actually really like to talk about childhood and creativity because like you were saying, I grew up in a super creative house. My dad, he got a photo degree from Dayton also, fun fact. So I got a photography degree from Dayton. My dad did. He actually also had Tim Wilbers as a professor when he was there, which is super funny. He did work for Roger Crum at one point for a summer, so he knew a couple of faculty members that I also had or ran into in the hallways. But yeah, he's a creative. My mom is also a creative. She's a writer and an educator. Both my parents are musical, both my siblings are musical. I am not very musical, but I grew up around a lot of music, a lot of magic, a lot of play.
Mm.
Um, my parents really prioritized us being bored because they thought it would lead to us
Yes.
being creative and playing, and they were both huge child development nerds. So that was their passion, and I'm so grateful for it
Mm.
because I don't get bored very easily now. I don't really experience that very much as an adult. There's always something I could be doing. I would say as a kid, I think the first kinds of art that I lean toward would actually be writing and building. I every summer would go to northern Michigan and I would go to a summer camp and they had a craft house there. Notoriously, I wanted to leave the camp like during the activity time and go back to the craft house and work on my projects. I would build doll houses, little fairy people, and it was my passion. I spent an entire summer making one fairy house
Oh
and
my
like all
gosh.
of these little fairy creatures to go in it. And I actually still have it at my parents' house, like up on a little shelf. So really cute. But yeah,
It's such a
sculpting is
beautiful
actually,
symbol, like the fairy house. I mean, of course, the memories that go along with that, but what a beautiful symbol of diving into a project that you had that passion for. And so you skipped out on other things in summer camp and you're like, no, craft house. Like I'm working on a project here, y'all. Like I've got some fire, some passion in my heart. So that's amazing that that thing as an object still exists that you can like look back to.
yes. I was into it. So that was my first, I think, big project that I really can remember sticking with.
Mm.
And then in middle school, I got into photography mostly for vain reasons. Like, it just felt like a way to take power as a woman. Like, your body's changing, and social media was just coming out, and I really wanted control over my image. And it gave me that control, honestly. So I
Mhm.
would like make my dad take me out to like model for photos. I was like, I'm gonna have the coolest Facebook photo. I'm gonna have the coolest Instagram photo, and
That's so
I'm gonna
empowering, especially in that middle school state, right? Like, I love how your dad was behind the camera. Yeah, like, let's get a cool photo of you. That's
we
amazing.
would collaborate. He was teaching me about light and about posing and about nature, and he didn't like anything like superposed, I would say, but we would go out in nature and like he would just take, you
Yeah.
know, images of me. I would give him input. I was also one of his photo assistants at that age, so he would pay me actually
Oh my
to
goodness.
hold the reflector, and
Mm.
yeah, it was a good time.
And
And
then did
then
that kind of trickle into your high school experience with continuing to like be involved in photography stuff, or was it any more fine
yeah,
art things?
I would say as soon as I got the camera, that's all I really did. I didn't think I was really good at drawing. I certainly didn't think I was very good at painting, but I also didn't give the mediums a whole lot of time because again, the camera was like such a powerful tool in high school.
Mm.
It, I mean, it made me a lot of money, honestly. I was every summer doing family portraits, doing senior pictures.
Wow.
I was doing everyone's pictures before prom. I think I was known for running around with my camera most of high school,
Which is
honestly.
sweet because it's like starting a small business as a teenager and like learning like you were developing clients and working with people and taking their pictures, getting a little bit of money and like little cash on the side.
I was learning a lot. I was I was very intrinsically motivated, I would say. Again, for like kind of vain reasons, but it's the truth. I wanted to buy Forever 21 and I was self-funding it.
That works.
You
Definitely.
know,
No,
my
it's I love how we can look back on past versions of ourselves and learn so much from those people. You know, like I think about even me years ago, but just this like just diving into things. And it reminds me of that, you sharing a little bit about that high school experience of just diving into that skill and just running as you go with it. And then tell me about how that translated over to college then.
So in college, I was all over the place because I knew I wanted to be in the arts. I didn't know if I wanted to go like my mom's route and be an educator. I didn't know if I wanted to just do fine art. I was in exploratory mode. I switched my major around a bunch of
I
times,
remember that.
which was great because I got to
Yeah.
meet so many cool people and try so many cool things out. And I don't really have a whole lot of regrets about that, honestly.
I love that. Like that's such a great way of looking at it too, because I think that talking with some people in college that are fearful about switching what they're doing in their path. Like I switched my major way late in the game, like junior year, and switched things up completely and so drastically and had minors and switched them up, but it allowed me to take classes and just learn more about myself. So I love how that you use that time to explore yourself and what you wanted and where you saw yourself and then keep continuing to like go after that.
Yeah. I I think if I have one regret though about the whole thing, I was so fearful about post grad. Like I carried that anxiety with me from day one of college of like how am I going to make money? How am I going to do all this like stuff? How's this going to go? I think partly because I had my own business in high school and it was never enough money for me to live on, right? And I had that awareness early on. And I knew that there were ways I could grow the business, right, to be able to be more profitable. I just didn't know if I wanted to do that because I watched my dad, make his own sacrifices in owning a business and growing a business and what that looks like. And I wasn't really sure I wanted to take that responsibility on myself early on, I guess.
Hmm.
But I wish I had just gone into college and been like, I'm here to explore. And it was more curious and creative and less fear driven about all of that, because that has never led me to a good place ever once in my life.
I hear that. I think that I can definitely relate personally with that, the fear part of it, almost kind of gaining more power than like the open and curiosity part, even though that is a part of it as well. And it's amazing how we can learn from those experiences too, right? And so tell me a little bit about like post grad, because I know that you've worked multiple jobs and I'm curious, I guess, about like how have you held space for yourself as an artist, as a creative?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm in a much more settled place about that than I was in college, and I'm sure this will evolve. That is the joy of life, that our opinions and feelings about ourselves change. But in school, I really thought that you had to be this like successful working artist in order to call yourself an artist. And now I am more, what's the word? I think I'm more comfortable just being a creative and having a multifaceted life. I
Yes.
have ADHD. I like having a lot of different identities and things going on, and that is something I carried a lot of shame about in school. And now I find it very thrilling, honestly. I find it thrilling to start new hobbies, new projects. I'm entering the field of counseling, so I'm really excited about that because that connects to kind of loosely connects to the things that I loved about journalism, which is getting to meet people and hear their stories. So really excited about that. And I just feel really good, honestly. And it took a really long time and a lot of work to get here.
It's something that you brought up is something that we talk a lot about in our Lava Lamp Lounge artist support group, which is free on Monday nights for people to join. But it's just like that theme of artist, identity, who am I? I see that my internet connection's unstable. I hope this is all coming through for y'all. But yeah, just like this, who am I? What does that mean? How do I break it down? And as a multimedia artist myself, and I know you are as well, working across so many different forms, it's nice to share people like you could be all the things. Like there are multiple parts of yourself. It's this like multifaceted, it's a creative life. I feel like something I've witnessed just as a friend of yours, and I'd love to hear you talk about more, is how you have either carved out space for yourself or held space for yourself as an artist, as a creative, especially someone who's neurodivergent and who, does all the other things. So how have you carved out space for yourself?
So I love this question, first of all. I almost want to ask you it back right away. But what I was going to say is I've carved out space for myself by one, actually committing to a physical space to be an artist. So we're
Mm.
actually currently in my art studio slash closet. It's this like tiny, weird addition to the apartment I'm renting. And I've made full use of it. You can actually see my illustrations in the background over there. For
Mm.
those of you who are listening, I have a cork board that I actually drilled into the wall, and I have a bunch of my pen illustrations for the tarot deck hung up there because I like being able to look at my work, think about my work. I don't know if you had this experience post grad, Morgan, but you're used to it during undergrad, during art school, being able to see your work all the time on the wall and process and think about it and change things and take it down and then put it back up.
Mhm.
And I think right after school, I didn't do enough to make my physical space a creative space. And that's been really important for me.
Mm.
I do my tarot readings in my studio. I sometimes do yoga in my studio. It is just my happy space. All my plants are really happy in here. And then I think the other ways that I hold space for myself as a creative is that I read creative books. I read about artists. I just read a book about why isn't this coming to me right now? I have the book on my shelf in here actually. But Sally Mann, there we go.
There
It
we
came to
go.
me.
Oh,
I
yes.
just read Sally Mann's memoir. Really amazing, by the way, guys. Everyone should go read that. I found it just thrilling. Like, thrilling is the right answer. I read The Shining before that book, and Sally Mann's book is more thrilling than The Shining.
And Sally Mann, photographer?
Yes,
Yes.
she
Okay.
is
That's
known.
ringing a bell with photography for me. Okay. No, I love that. Thank you for kind of taking us through. And as someone who knows you, it's like I can almost, I feel like I could answer that question for you in a way, but something I've witnessed that I really appreciate and see you doing. And it's nice to get that affirmation of like, okay, yes, this is the thing. And something that I've practiced myself too, as someone who's coming out of school or just trying to even be like activating more of my creative self is space, whether it's a closet, whether it's a fold-up table, whether you've got the luxury to have a studio, but just a space that you can go. And I think about space so much. So I think that's a wonderful thing that you're doing is having a space for your stuff. And I totally resonate with that feeling of seeing your work on the wall, and whether you're someone who is like doing any types of form of artwork, but even the simplicity of a cork board, pinning things on the wall, or even putting your ideas up, putting your ideas somewhere. So I think there's a lot of, I know there's a lot of power in that. And the way that you're connecting with inspiration from other artists, whether it's reading book memoirs, or I know that you go through Mary Oliver's, devotionals, the poetry, but just like surrounding yourself with other forms of inspiration and artists. And you mentioned something in that response that is why we're here and something I really want to talk to you about. So you created the Midwest tarot deck. I'm holding it in my hands right now. And these are hand drawn. Yes. Oh, can we do a little like touch our deck?
Cheers. Well, cheers with our
Cheers.
deck.
Cheers with the deck. So this is hand drawn deck of 78 tarot cards. And on your Etsy shop where you can find this, and the link to that is all in the show notes, people. You describe it as featuring intricate ink illustrations of animals, plants, and fungi native to the Midwest. Perfect for nature enthusiasts and tarot readers alike. This unique deck celebrates the rich biodiversity of the region. Take us back to your first spark of inspiration for this deck.
So, my first spark of inspiration for this deck goes back to COVID. We were in lockdown and I was living with Rio and Susie and my sister Jill. So, again, house full of artists, also my husband Sachin, and my parents. But specifically, the tarot journey starts with Rio and Susie and Jill because Rio introduced me to artists who actually draw their own decks. And I found that like so fascinating. And I just thought it was really cool to make a fine art deck. And then we made a really crappy one in like 40 minutes. I think this was after Rio and Jill had moved out, and Susie and I decided to like like really quickly cut up paper and just like fast draw and throw it like in the middle of a living room. And we were laughing because it was ridiculous. Like these are bad drawings. They were crude, they were crass. We were just having a good time. And then I was going through, well, okay. So that's the spark of inspiration, I would
Which
say. And
I
it
just
was
want to pause and say I love how it's rooted in this like form of play too.
yeah.
That just came up for me. But yes, keep going.
So that's the spark. And I would say at the time it was unserious. I didn't think I would actually ever embark on making my own deck at that point. It was just for fun. I was playing around with it. Then I went through a period of really intense life changes and grief. And this was still during the lockdown. So I lost my sister Jill in August of 2020. And the world stopped for me. I it's funny because like going back to that period, I don't remember a lot. And I just know that I spent hours walking. I was walking like 10 miles. I would go out to the dunes and just walk. And a
Mhm.
lot of times friends would join me, my parents would join me. And my sister Jill was someone who was always outside. I would not even say I was outdoorsy, probably, before Jill passed away, which is kind of upsetting to me because we didn't really get to enjoy the outdoors together. She was in a camping group at Dayton,
Yeah.
and yeah, every weekend she was camping. So anyone who went to UD, you probably know Jill being outside camping in the woods somewhere in the Midwest. And even during COVID, she and Susie actually set up a tent in my parents' backyard and like slept out there for a few days, which I was like, no, thank you.
You're like,
Um,
I'll stay inside.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I was going outside and
Mhm.
I just felt really spiritually connected to her in that space. And I felt like it was probably her biggest life value is she valued other people and nature and the outdoors and was a very peaceful person. So I started to notice signs in nature. And they felt like little nudges of either love from her or just from love and the universe. And I was someone who, prior to Jill passing away, was not religious. I would not consider myself religious now either.
Mhm.
I have a lot of religious trauma and baggage from my upbringing. So I honestly, I think I was an atheist beforehand. And that whole period of grief changed me in the way that I feel connected to others and to nature. And I don't have definitive answers for what it all means, but I did want to feel open to collaborating with whatever that magic juice is that keeps us all connected.
Yeah, and it's reminding me of something that you said before, which is just that I believe that you can receive signs, period. Like that's my big thing. Like open-ended signs from the universe, from love, from a force. And I really appreciate you going into that like just vulnerable story about what brought so much of this and that value rooted in Jill and your sister and you going out and just walking, just being in nature. And it's incredible that that is something that you kind of like took ownership of as part of your own. And it was just this own your own journey of discovering, exploring, and even understanding and thinking about values and beliefs. And I know you've said before too of like that righteousness of using religious dogma, like the screw the system. Like it feels very like reclamation to me, a lot of kind of like personal self-revolutionary stuff too, with even tarot and folks using it. And something that I brought up with my partner Bram with the deck, and he was kind of like, "Oh, I don't want to." use it or something like that. But I was like, but just look, like just take a look at these illustrations. So I think I love the deck in this way because you have this companion booklet that talks about the different ways of using it. Whether you're someone who's familiar with tarot, and even if you'd like to even describe like, oh, what does that mean? But I love how you even put like a little of the history of tarot, the 15th century as playing cards. And then you put the French oculus. Am I saying that right? Sometimes I don't. We could,
I
but
couldn't
like
tell you.
right, but like they claim that each card represented a specific message from the universe. But how you even say in here, reclaiming that in a way, right? Like instead, like think of it as a guidebook. Get creative. Use it as a field book, a nature book, yes, like create your own universal symbols, use it for a journal prompt or even art inspiration, things to just connect you in your own way of using it, which is sweet that you had your own experience of using that whole personal journey. And I love how you have this companion book in it because it really reflects back to encouraging others to use this in their own way.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for, you know what, your beliefs are your own and you should take ownership over it. If you are an atheist and you want to use this deck like the way that birders, I don't know if I should call them birders or not. I don't know what the
Yeah.
proper word is. I should. My dad's an avid bird watcher. They have these little cards to showcase birds local to an area that you can like flip through and keep on your table. You could do that with this deck. These are all things that you'll find in the Midwest if you just wanted to learn more about Midwest nature and just have this little art coffee table moment. I'm fine with
Definitely.
that too. So I just
Yeah.
want to put that out there that my take is I use it for spirituality and to collaborate with chance. And
Ooh, I
you don't
love
have to
that.
if you don't want to.
I'm like writing things down, like collaborate with chance. And so tell me something that you learned from creating this deck. Because as I'm, 78 cards, it feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like a personal research study of the indigenous Midwest.
Yes. And I would really like to just give a shout out to Robin Wall Kimmer. She wrote this beautiful book called Braiding Sweetgrass. And that book is another big inspiration for this deck. So, yeah, everyone should read that book. It's beautiful. She's a
It's
poet, she's a
amazing.
scientist, she's indigenous. It's beautiful. But I wanted to know who are my neighbors. In this book, she talks about knowing your neighbors and feeling grounded through nature by knowing who's around you. And that became very important to me. So it was a study of who are my neighbors? Who are these friendly people who are
Mm.
signs, collaborators, who are with me? We're made of the same materials, like at the very, very base level of things. And I find that really comforting.
I love that. Walk me through a little bit about your process or how you made decisions. Like even I did uh a card poll before this, and it's amazing how we can learn from others too about like usage and stuff, because even from the companion book or from hearing some friends talk about their use of cards, my one friend Luke mentioned, oh, he does a 3 card poll, past, present, future, or situation, action, and outcome. And I've never done that before. So I did that before. I used it in a new way before this session. And anytime I've used this deck, whether it's pulling 1 card or a handful or whatever it is, I I'm so drawn to the choice of the the animal, the insect, the creature, the plant that is connected to this. And for me, I'm very new to tarot, so I'm always Google searching like 3 of Pentacles. What does that? Because I love symbolism and I love looking at something like, yes, taking it in for myself and being like, what does a praying mantis mean to me? What does, like, this one is a firefly, the 3 of Pentacles that I pulled. Like, what does a firefly feel like? What can I imagine? And I love it too as a Midwestern gal of having the experience of seeing that and like what a firefly, oh my gosh, I could close my eyes and just imagine hundreds of them when I used to live on a farm, and they're just in fields, and there's this magic. So it was a really cool to look up more about the Three of Pentacles and what that meant. So I was curious if that had any part to play in matching the illustrations that you made with the card. I would love to hear more about that. I've actually been waiting to ask you that for this, because I've just been so excited whenever I'm using this deck, like this, the king of that I pulled, the King of Pentacles is a cicada. And I'm like, ooh, this is such just a powerful symbol. So tell me more. I'm fired up about this kind of stuff.
Okay. So I would say when I first started making this project, I was approaching it from such a organized, intense way. Yes, I was approaching it from a very structured place in the beginning, and I had so many different columns. I had columns to write, okay, this is the card from, by the way, the deck is based on a traditional tarot deck. So I didn't make up the names that accompany each card. Like there are different things in the major and minor arcana that I borrowed from the original kind of tarot deck. Um, and all of those come with meaning, like you were saying, Morgan. So I was trying to find ways to think about the animals in their personalities, in their habitat, in the way that they looked to feel the closest to the cards that I paired them with, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
It makes so
So
much sense because as a user of the deck, I've really felt that connection and the intentionality behind this isn't random. And I've really enjoyed it too. Like this one experience that I had with using the deck, and this has been my first more traditional deck that I have. I just got this one made by the artist Lisa Congdon. It's a values deck, and then this other one that I have, Sacred Rebels Oracle. It's more of just an oracle deck, so it doesn't follow that traditional minor and major arcana like you were mentioning. So this is my first one. So it's super sweet to just learn more about, oh, what is this? And that's why I like how Google is a nice tool to tell me things. But this one experience that I had is I would pull one card a day and it would allow me to prompt a journaling experience. And the one that was I was pulling, maybe it happened like two times in a row, was the praying mantis card. And I like how I'm like, I don't, I couldn't tell you like, oh, it's four pentacles. Like, but I just, the praying mantis symbol. And then it was that day that later I was in my garden and I look up and there's a praying mantis. And I hadn't really been, I haven't had a lot of experiences with praying mantises. And just having that, and then also previous to the fact, looking up and Google searching not only like, ooh, what is this card telling me, but also like, what does a praying mantis feel like? And then I even went so far to search symbols and connectedness to praying mantises. And so learning then more about that indigenous insect and then seeing it in person and just being able to closely observe it in its habitat of doing its thing and then feeling just this sense of connection to the insect that yes, I would have maybe, if I didn't do the card, I would still feel this like, ooh, oh my goodness. But having that card pull and looking up those little Google things and doing some journaling about it and then seeing the insect, it filled my heart in such a different way that if that intentionality and experience wasn't behind it, it would be so different.
thank you so much for sharing that story with me. That is exactly my intention behind this deck, truly. Like everyone is open to use it, like I said, however they'd like, but
Mm,
there's something about taking time and being intentional about knowing what's outside. And I
mm,
think that whenever you pull a card, you are in some way being more intentional about knowing what's outside. And then you're able to notice, right? You're able to notice and recognize, oh, I know that. Like that's a praying mantis. I pulled that card today, and I think it makes us feel more connected. And that's kind of just the overall goal.
yes, absolutely. And I love how your illustrations with the oyster mushroom, even putting the name, like I've seen this type of mushroom so much. So it is a learning tool. And I love that so many interconnections to it. And thank you for kind of showing us a little bit more about that process. The next question, I think the last question I have about process, unless you want to share more anything else, is when you were drawing these studies, did you find yourself outside, bringing your sketchbook outside to do some in-person observation? Was it based on some reference photos? Just tell me more about that.
That's a great question because I was longing to be outside. I was living in Chicago at the time. I was walking all the time outside. I was on the lake shore, so I would see some of these creatures in the wild, but not enough. And so I was using reference photos, and a really good place to find reference photos was Michigan State had a lot of good ones, and so did the Field Museum. Those were two really helpful places, especially for the insects,
Mm,
because finding a photo of a spider that's not, that's recognizable if I were to make an illustration was complicated, and I'm not, what's the word? It's funny because my background is really neither illustrator or scientist,
mm,
but it, these are my observational drawings of photos, mostly done inside from a Chicago apartment.
mm,
And it's just funny now to think about because for instance the red buds, the eastern red bud, that's one of the cards. It's one of the swords actually. I wouldn't have been able to recognize that out in the wild, and they actually have a lot of red buds in cities like as a part of the landscape, and you start to be able to click the things together the more observational
okay.
drawings you do, even if it's just from a photo, I guess is what I wanted
Yeah.
to say. So yeah, I wish it had been more whimsical and that I'd been like sitting out in nature. But honestly, I wasn't. I was just
Mm.
longing for it. And I
Oh,
think this project was coming from a place of longing.
mm. Yeah, there's so much there. Um, that word longing has been coming up a lot for me. And it's just wonderful that you're able to still like use the deck and go out in nature and do your thing, but it's sweet that you were in this space of longing, wishing, wanting to be closer to experience going on these walks, but in this space of connecting yourself to nature as a value, as a tool, as a way of finding yourself and exploring all of those things that come along with it. And like you said, educating yourself, knowing your neighbor. So sweet, Maura. So happy you made this such a beautiful thing. And I was, I felt so good purchasing it from someone I know, someone who's an artist, a creative, someone who I know. Like, it's like you can feel the energy and the effort and the intention that you've put into this. And it was just a no-brainer to be like, I'm supporting this and going to purchase this. And I want to encourage anyone listening to this, if you're curious about the Midwest Tarot deck, I'm plugging it. It's wonderful, no matter how you use it. The links are in the show notes. Check out Maura's Etsy shop. Order yourself a Midwest Tarot deck if it so calls your name, and just explore it. It's such a beautiful, beautiful deck. And I want to talk about the how-tos, the using the deck. I know we hinted at it, but and I just described my own personal ritual and a little example, but give me an example of a personal ritual that you have found with this deck.
Yeah, I would love to. So, how do I put this? My own experience with tarot has been that if you give the deck too much power, it can create anxiety when you're Googling the meanings of a traditional tarot deck. So I would really encourage everyone to first approach it from a place of ease. So, something that I like to do before I approach a tarot deck is either go for a walk, maybe do some stretching, take some time to feel more grounded and at ease and playful, honestly, because I think the more playful you approach this, the more fun and the better the outcome will be. So I would say that's like my first tip for rituals with the deck. My second tip is to actually go out in nature and collect things that you feel called to collect for whatever reason. So this is a stone that I got in Petoskey. So there's like little coral and fossils in here, and I love it. And I keep it in this little bird's nest that my mom made for me, actually. My mom wove me this for Christmas one year. And then I have things that aren't natural in here too that I just like the textural feeling of it. I have a hacky sack in here. I actually have a little tiny acorn from a friend's wedding shower. I just loved it so much that I've kept it. I have a chestnut that I collected. So I think going outside and finding objects that make you feel good to put in an altar arrangement helps. It helps keep things creative and light and connected. So I would definitely suggest that. I like to use the deck to ask it, what type of energy do I need to consider or embody today
Mm.
to put me in alignment with myself and the universe? I feel like that is the kindest question I can ask the deck most days. And I find that it doesn't, what's the word that I'm looking for?
And can you repeat that, by the way, too? You said what type of energy?
I phrase it differently almost every day, but it
Yeah.
is, to paraphrase, it is, what kind of energy should I be aware of or try to embody to be in line with myself and in integrity with the universe? So it's open-ended, um, and I think that that way it keeps me curious rather than fearful, right? There are cards in here that have some baggage, if you will. For instance, the towers. I made it a skunk and I tried to make it an especially stupid drawing so that if I do pull the towers, and the towers is about change and like things being flipped on its head, which can be very overwhelming for someone with anxiety like me. But I just see it as a skunk that might spray me that day. Like, this might be a little stinky. It's not going to be that serious. Like, don't take it that
You might
seriously.
need to take a tomato bath or change your clothes, but it will be fine.
Like, when I draw the tower now, and I do prefer to do a daily pull because then it doesn't, it's not that serious. It's one day, right?
Mm.
I don't prefer to do yearly pulls anymore for myself. I'll do it for other people if they request it. And I don't really like doing monthly or weekly or even moon cycles. That's too much time. I want to be in the present as much as possible. So I try and do it for just a daily pull or something, a small segment of time that feels manageable to me. Again, this is all preference based. And then if I were to pull the towers, I would be trying to think of, oh, okay, something really unexpected could come up today, and I need to be flexible and I need to have a good attitude. And that's like what I'll leave that morning ritual with and thinking of. So even if you don't believe in future readings or anything like that, it's like a good reminder, right? I mean, something unexpected could happen any day, and you
Right.
should have a good attitude and try and,
Definitely. I think that that's what I really have leaned into when it comes to having some decks. And even like this one that I just got is it's all like values. So and they have a little like one of it says adventure. So I think I love learning about how other folks use this. And I've have some friends who do tarot readings and they'll ask, think of a question or a theme. And a lot of times I'm thinking of this open-ended space of just like, what is something that I need to hear right now? What is
yes.
yeah, just give me a little nugget. Give me something. Um, and I
I
think,
like, what
oh,
should I be open to hearing is a good start.
what should I be open to hearing? Or what do I get to be open to hearing about? Yeah. Yes, and I love the way that you mentioned that in the deck with the guidebook of just and you meant it's right actually on the side of the deck, which is super sweet, but it says read with a curious open heart. And that playful energy of it. When I was showing Bram, my partner, the deck, and I was like, just, touch it, look through the illustrations, they're super sweet. And then he was like kind of looking through it, and then a card popped out. And I was like, Bram, check it out. Like, what card is it? But it was sweet because at first, initially, it wasn't really into maybe pulling a card. But I love how you're breaking it down into like, this is your daily practice. This is just something that is playful that you're leaning into with a playful, open heart, just as you say on the deck. So thank you for making this amazing thing, Maura. At the end of like, as you're here right now, where the deck is made, you've completed this project, which was, I feel, was it this past 2024 year, calendar year that it was complete, or was it last 2023?
It was, I came out with it, I think, finally last June.
Okay.
That was in 2023. And it took me like 2 years to make. It was a lot of effort, I would say.
And as someone who works with 2 year long projects, I empathize with that. How did you celebrate after making it? Like when you got the thing, when you saw the physical thing, what happened next?
You know, I'm working on that. I really struggle to celebrate after finishing things or when something is a big deal. It's like too overwhelming to me in a way.
Mm.
So I would say I celebrate this deck by just using it on a daily
Yeah.
basis and actually playing with it because that's what feels good to me.
Yes. I love that. And I hope that this conversation too is like a way to recount and to celebrate all of this beautiful work that you have made, this personal, like 2 year plus long project. And thank you for inspiring us. I mean, I'm like inspiring us, all the listeners, but truly, I have really loved being in your circle and seeing what you've been up to and owning a thing that my friend created and using it. And I feel really inspired to do a daily poll to kind of just get me playful and going, open me up a little bit.
And I would just like to respond to that by saying I could not have finished this deck probably without the artist way and the artist support group that you had. I mean, I truly mean it because I was at a really tough point in the project when I started that.
Mm.
And when I entered your Artist Way group, I was transitioning between moving states, and I chose to be in this apartment based on the fact that I could have an art studio in here. And I was like, I'm going to finish the deck. I'm going to really commit to this. I'm going to be serious. And so I just want to thank you for creating that space because I don't think I could have done it like without that group. It was just the check-in and the positive energy that I needed to finish a project because starting a project's easy, finishing a project is not.
Mm. I love how that artist support group too, whether you're in the artist way or you're just coming as a creative person, like that weekly check-in gave a little bit of accountability. And there's some people that are like, I really hate that word accountability. And I'm like, oh, support. Like they're like, I love that. But like just a little space, and I say little, not to like minimize it, but I guess just a space on the internet virtually where people can connect in and just check in with yourself and check in with the group, offer that support. So that's so sweet that Lava Lamp Lounge was able to kind of like be a part of this process to kind of give you that encouragement you needed to just finish the dang thing. And again, as someone who's worked with projects that have been like 2 years plus, um, yeah, it sometimes is like, oh, it's done. Okay. So I'm here to give you, I'm like, giving you the celebration hands that I'm so proud of you. That's so freaking cool. And folks, check out the Midwest Tarot deck. Enough said. That's all I gotta say about this. It's so good. I love it. And I'll like, I'm such a chatterbox, but I love how this is teaching me about my roots and about my own home. If you are from the Midwest, it like hits home in a different way and it celebrates our indigenous species all around us, our neighbors.
Yes. And you know what? The Midwest is underrated as far as beauty and nature goes. You know, people, they go to the mountains, they go out west, they go out east, but Midwest is best.
Midwest is best. Let's leave it at that. No, I love it. I was writing the description to this podcast and I was like, I was almost about to be like two Midwest gals because I
I
feel
love it. When I graduated from college, I wasn't sure where I was going to live. So on my Instagram, because at the time everyone had a little pin, like, this is where I live and blah, blah, blah. I just put pin somewhere in the Midwest.
oh my
And that's
gosh.
still true. That remains so true for me.
Mine has always been like somewhere in Ohio because I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, in the Midwest for sure. Maura, I love you. Thank you for being here. And I'm glad that our listeners, whoever's listening out there, can kind of get to know you better, as a co-host, as a host of this show. And I'm excited for us to have on folks to talk about. So if you're someone who has a project that you'd like to talk about, if you'd like to celebrate anything, if you'd like just to come and gab about something, Maura and I are here for you. We're the queen of gabs.
Yeah, I would love to hear about any kind of creative process that someone has and is passionate about.
Definitely.
So
Yep,
let us know.
check out our show notes. Check out the Etsy shop. I'm going to put that there. I will also put Robin Wall Kimmer's information that inspired this project, along with ways of how to come on live in the lounge and be a part of our beautiful mess that we have here, which I'm loving every second of.
You know what? I'm really proud of us for doing it. Okay, tonight was messy, but we showed up and that's what it's about.
That's what it's
So,
about. Keep showing up. And some things that I wrote down too that is just so beautiful is just unserious daily polls, nudges of love, sparks of unserious play, and collaborating with chance. So I hope that leaves everyone with something to connect with today. And thanks for this conversation, Maura. You're awesome.
oh, I love you, Morgan. Thanks for holding space for me and celebrating me as an artist. It means so much to me.
Until next month, y'all, live from the lounge. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Next time, bye.